Now, the US says Israel has agreed to 4-hour humanitarian pauses in fighting each day, allowing civilians to evacuate. Joe Biden has hailed the agreement as a step in the right direction, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has suggested the pauses would not be across the whole of Gaza and hasn't confirmed a plan for recurring breaks in fighting.
Kansas officials warn the number of Palestinians killed in the conflict so far is very possibly higher than the official figure of nearly 11,000. Joining us now is a spokesperson for the Israeli government, Eylon Levy. Eylon, does this mean Israel's strategy has changed? Where are we on these 4-hour pauses to try and get aid in and civilians out?
Israel's strategy remains the same. We're continuing at full force with our campaign to totally destroy Hamas in response to the October 7th massacre, while doing everything we can to keep civilians out of harm's way. Israel has for the past week been operating a humanitarian corridor for residents in northern Gaza to leave. Now, why are we urging them to evacuate south for their safety? Because Hamas has embedded itself deeply under civilian areas in the north, under schools, under hospitals, under mosques. I just read an article now by one of the soldiers, one of the reporters embedded with our soldiers. Our soldiers have literally uncovered a tunnel shaft underneath a child's bed in Gaza. That's how deeply Hamas has embedded itself in civilian areas. So for a month now, we've been urging people to get out of the way temporarily for their safety. We know it's difficult, but it's better to get out of a war zone than to be stuck in one. And we're continuing to operate those humanitarian corridors, securing them, despite Hamas actually attacking the soldiers who have been securing that humanitarian corridor, because we want to get the civilians out of the way so we can face Hamas man-to-man inside Gaza.
And in terms of the IDF and Netanyahu, what is the strategy from here? Clearly, progress has been made. That's what we're being told by Israel. Also, just in terms of the way Netanyahu is changing his mind. He says that Israel does need to take control of Gaza in the short term. That is against the wishes of the United States. What is Israel going to do next?
Our strategy is to continue with what has been working in the last few weeks, to totally demolish Hamas's terrorist and governing infrastructure inside the Gaza Strip in response to the October 7th massacre. It's been nearly 2 decades that Hamas has used the Gaza Strip as a base for launching rockets, tens of thousands of rockets against Israeli cities, that horrific massacre on October 7th. And this war will end with Hamas no longer in power and no longer in a position to attack our people. So we're going after every tunnel. We're exposing the rocket launchers in the mosques. We're exposing the activation cables in the clinics. We're exposing the tunnel shafts in children's bedrooms. We are demolishing the Hamas terror state inside the Gaza Strip. And when this war ends, I wish I could tell you it's next week, but unfortunately it will be long. We will need a new reality in the Gaza Strip, a new reality that brings security for the people of Israel and ensures that the Gaza Strip is totally demilitarized and can never again be used by a terror group to launch indiscriminate attacks against our people, much less the sort of horrific massacre we saw on October 7th.
You describe your strategy as continuing, not changing. Senior Biden administration officials have said the number of Palestinians killed in Gaza very possibly higher than the almost 11,000 number being officially reported by Hamas's health ministry. And the head of the UN has said that the number of civilians killed in the Palestinian region shows there's clearly something very wrong with Israel's military operations. How much pressure are you coming under from the likes of the UN, from the United States, to change that strategy?
We're continuing because we have no choice but to destroy the Hamas terror machine that perpetrated the October 7th massacre while doing everything we can to get civilians out of harm's way. Now, just a word on the casualty numbers. Those numbers, including those coming from the UN, are coming from Hamas. They are coming from the terror organization that on October 7th burned and beheaded children. They are coming from the organization that told the whole world one big porky pie about an Israeli airstrike on a hospital, when it turned out in the morning it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that misfired and hit the parking lot of a hospital. These are not credible sources. This is not credible information. And we expect the death toll to continue rising from the Hamas terrorists we are killing. During Britain's war against ISIS together with civilians. There is no reason for civilians to be hurt at the moment because we have been urging them for a month to get out of harm's way. We have been putting our own soldiers in harm's way to secure a humanitarian corridor for them to leave. There is no reason for civilians still to be in harm's way. I'll tell you what else we're doing, and this is something that no country in the world has ever done. Yesterday, the IDF announced a human shield hotline because we know that Hamas is holding people against their will in the Gaza Strip, in northern Gaza, to stop them from leaving. Its whole strategy is based on human shields. And we are appealing to anyone who Hamas is stopping from leaving to get in touch with the IDF so that we know where they are and we can make maximal efforts to get them to harm's way. You know, I wish we could fight this war in sterile laboratory conditions. I wish we could fight this war out on a battlefield like they did in the Middle Ages, man to man. But Hamas is forcing us to fight this war in densely populated urban areas. And we're doing everything we can, really, above and beyond our obligations under international law, to get civilians out of harm's way. We don't want to see people being hurt, and we think that the international community should start doing its job and help facilitate that evacuation instead of putting more obstacles in Israel's path as we do the right thing to try to save the other side's civilians from the folly of their own leaders.
Well, to be fair to the international community, they are pushing for humanitarian pauses. In terms of the feeling in Israel, do the Israeli people support the way Netanyahu is carrying out this operation?
The Israeli public, and this is something that's extraordinary, actually, after the last year of political division we've seen in Israel, is completely united around the goal of demolishing Hamas completely so it can never threaten our people. That really is a point of consensus between left and right in Israel. Everyone understands this war must end with the total destruction of Hamas's terror state. And as a result, we're continuing with full force. We will not consider any sort of ceasefire without a return of our hostages. We have 240 people in the Gaza Strip, including over 30 children, including 10 toddlers. And if anyone thinks we're going to stop putting pressure on Hamas while a 10-month-old baby is being held hostage in a dark tunnel by armed gunmen with Kalashnikov rifles, they have another thing coming. We will continue putting pressure on Hamas to bring our hostages home and to defeat the Hamas terror state so it can no longer threaten our people.